As a busy entrepreneur and small business owner, I know for a fact that creating exciting content to promote your show every week on social media is probably the last thing that excites you, right? It's probably the bottom of your to-do list. However, I know that these scenarios happen often. One, you're maybe spending too many hours editing the podcast and you're left with absolutely no energy to promote the podcast online. Or number two, you accidentally went down a rabbit hole of Canva templates because you cannot find the quote unquote perfect one to promote the episode that week. Or maybe you're just trying to craft a better plan to show up authentically on Instagram, but every week you're just burnt out, or you go through these cycles of feast and famine where you either show up for weeks on end or then go on a sabbatical because you just burned down. If you said that's me to one or all three, honestly, this episode is for you because my guest is Em Connors. She's more commonly known in the online space and on Instagram space as the creative Bodega. And I have been following Em for quite a few years now. She is a certified Canva expert. And what that means is that she's only one out of 43 people all over the world who have a lot of insight into Canva. But I'll tell you more about on that later. She also helps small business owners who either love or hate design to show up more professionally on Instagram. She covers a lot of the basics that you should know about in order to elevate your online presence, but also how to show up in a way that actually creates content without overwhelm. I absolutely love her content, and I know that you will too. So on this conversation, we cover a few myths and practical steps to showing up on the best possible way on Instagram. We also talk about a few things that I know for a fact that you're doing as a small business owner. So stick until the end because also Em has this phenomenal exclusive offer for you, the listener of this podcast. And so we start this conversation focusing on the myths, but I will tell you that you probably need a notepad for this episode because we share so many goodies. So I'm Annick Xavier, and this is the Podcast Space, a practical but actionable podcast that's going to get you unstuck on your podcast journey. All right, let's go. Hi, Em. I'm so excited to have you here on the show.
Thank you. I can't wait to jump into all things Canva and content creation with you.
Woohoo, yes, because honestly, I'm such a fan of Canva. I love everything that they do, and you share so much about how to really maximize Canva through the lens of the small business owner and the entrepreneur who's running all the things. And so I love everything that you're sharing because it's just truly, really something that people can follow along. So I am thrilled to dive in.
Good. Believe me, I could talk about it for days.
Yes. And so I want to start right away with misconceptions because unfortunately, both in the podcasting world and the Instagram space, there's so many misconceptions about like what actually converts, listeners and viewers into really kind of like tighter, warmer leads. And so I like kind of shining a light on the things that people are doing that may be overcomplicating that we need to kind of like demystify, but also to help them stop doing these things because they're not helping them. So let's dive in right away into your biggest pet peeve about Canva and graphics and social media content.
I would say without a doubt, it's people thinking that they need to start with a blank page in Canva because they can't find the perfect template. Like I always tell my students, I'm like, we know that you started with a blank template. It's very obvious. You're not a graphic designer and you should just never do it. Like it doesn't look good. So just people thinking that there isn't that one perfect template for them. Like, of course, these templates are not going to have the right words or the right content, right? But you have to be able to look at it with an objective eye. Like, could this work for the message I'm trying to put out there, And something I like to tell people to do is, pop 5 or 6 templates in to one, design, and then start customizing them one by one and kind of see which one stands out and which one might work the best, delete the rest and move forward. So, yeah.
Do you feel like sometimes and because like I love design and I do have like a background in it in a way, so that's why for me it's easy to spot, but I reckon that both alike for podcasting and graphic design, it's also not knowing what the goal of that post is, right?
Well,
It's like not having the clarity of like, what is the problem that this, or what is the awareness that I want to create with this graphic? So would you say that that probably is something that people need to work through first?
I do. Well, yeah, like what is the message? What's the goal? Where's the value? And how is it best conveyed? You know, maybe it's not always a Canva graphic. Maybe it doesn't have to be a graphic. Maybe it's just a simple picture of you. Maybe it's a reel, you know? So yeah, falling back on graphics, people hide behind graphics, I think, a lot of the time when I want to see their face. I'm the first one to say, like, I don't like going to a feed where it is just graphic. You know, I don't know what the person looks like. I don't hear their voice. I don't see them smiling. Like, I want to see the human behind the brand. So yeah, I think people fall back on graphics a little too hard sometimes, and they should just be one part of your overall sort of approach to social media.
I agree. Having a diversified feed also, especially with the algorithms online changing so fast, it's just a good strategy to have diversity in terms of the type of content you're publishing.
Absolutely. You know, another thing is just diversity in the types of content, whether it's, you know, video, reels, static photos, graphics, carousels, and also varying the type of value that you're providing. You know, I don't want to always be inspired. I want to be inspired, educated, entertained, and then try to convert me once in a while, right? So yeah, that is, and you know what another big misconception is, now that you asked that question, I'm thinking about it, is assuming that all of your posts should perform the same. And if they don't, to like get rid of that type of post idea, right? It's just not true. Like a certain post of like a picture of me with the story in the caption, you know, the values in the story is not going to perform the same as a Canva how-to reel that's very savable, right? But there's different purposes to both of those posts. In the picture of me, I just want to talk to people and let them get to know me better and make them become fans of mine, the person. You know, in the how-to reel, I want to flex my expertise muscles. And so they're very different, but they have different goals and they have different types of people I'm trying to attract. And just because one performs better or not as well as the other one doesn't mean it's a waste of time.
Yes. And something that you mentioned, because obviously podcast content is evergreen. And the strength in podcast content is that it will work for you 2 months from now, 3 months from now. Now, I mean, I look at my graphics and, you know, it may be that idea that something that I shared today would have a short life cycle. However, you often share how people shouldn't be deleting stuff that underperformed, right?
Oh my gosh, no. I just this perfect case in point. Yesterday, I did a reel that I thought was hilarious. It was a more funny, lighthearted voiceover. It did not do well for me at all. And I kind of watched throughout the day like, that's so fascinating. But you know what else? I sent an email, my regular newsletter out on Tuesday, and its open rate wasn't anywhere near what it normally is either. So I'm sort of like, you know, it's an off week. It was a long weekend, Memorial Day, summer's kicked off. I think the vibe's sort of different. People are maybe a little less engaged. It's okay. I literally am always like, just keep moving forward, right? Like, don't go back and delete anything. Everything you can learn from everything you put out there. And, you know, if you thought it was good, you know, what could you do? How could you repurpose it, reuse it in a couple of months and change the headline or change the medium or like, you know?
I love the word you said, repurpose. We'll get to that in a second. However, I want to talk about the importance of not deleting stuff, and creators think about this all the time. Oh, this episode didn't do as well as I expected, therefore something's wrong with it, and they go and delete it, where like stuff can get suddenly that keyword pops into people's awareness, or that topic becomes known, and it can happen both on social media and podcasts. So have you seen that sometimes like content performed very well after a few months and it's old content, so it's not content that you touched on? Have you seen that happen?
The only time I've really seen that happen is if I do repurpose it and maybe tweak something. Like the headline typically wasn't a great one. And I would imagine it's sort of the same with podcast episodes. I mean, I search for podcast episodes by certain keywords. So
Yes.
if it's not in there, it's not coming across my screen. So yeah, the only time I've really seen like a bump is if I redo it and just tweak something that just sounds better to people, or you just don't know. You just never know. It's like, it just could be an off. This is something I also stand by. I don't overanalyze this stuff. Like, I move on. I say, that's interesting. And then I'm on to the next piece of content, I'm not throwing in the towel, giving up, questioning everything I'm doing. I'm like, okay, I'm going to learn from that. And I'm going to move on.
Yeah, and there's so many things that can happen, though. They are, I would say, probably like one external that you do not have control over at all. Maybe like the platforms are testing stuff. Like for instance, this week alone, I sent out a newsletter when ConvertKit were testing stuff, and it messed up the formatting of my newsletter. Did I just like send out a fixed newsletter because the bullet points were in weird places? No. I just like, okay, they will give me something to talk about next week. It's like, hey, this happened. Did you notice? Did it like negatively impact the way that you perceive me as a thought leader? No, like you were like, oh, okay, that looks weird. Okay, but content's good, right? So
totally.
Don't
dwell
so hard.
Don't dwell on it, and don't be so hard on yourself. It's like things happen all the time. One of my highest performing reels has a spelling error in it. Like it should have been your Y-O-U-R instead of Y-O-U''re. And that's what I put. I was rushing. It was a reel. My kids were getting home from school and I was just, let me just get this out. You know what I mean? It's it has hundreds of thousands of views. And so many of the comments are like, about the spelling error. And I'm like, just keep commenting on it, because you're just helping it, pump it along that algorithm train. I'm just like, thanks, spelling police.
Right.
Where's your content? I want to be like, where's your content? At least I'm putting content out.
Yes. Okay. So a couple of things on that. One time I did a post that was like, how to get a top ranking podcast, because there's a lot of people who don't understand how that happens. And there was a typo in the post, and I noticed that like 2 hours after, and it already had like 4 saves. And again, for the creators like that I talk about, like some people don't even get like barely any engagement.
Yeah.
So like 4 saves, I know that is, it's something. And I was
you
like,
don't want to delete it. Yeah.
I don't want to delete. Exactly.
No.
And then I was like, well, there's the typo. There's me. Because my whole branding is about creating imperfect content. And I'm like, perfect example of like me living my values.
Yes. I love that.
So that's important to know. Like, is it really a big deal? Like we overthink it. But so let's talk about content repurposing. The conversation for 2023 has been, I'm burnt out, I'm overworked, I'm exhausted, I don't find as much passion on the things that I did before. What would you say are, a few recommendations for people who are feeling really overworked and are just trying to show up their face somehow?
Oh, this is a very hot topic. It's actually one of my highest open emails was about how I avoid burnout. Because I watch it too. Some of my top, I wouldn't say favorite creators, but creators I have followed on Instagram that are way bigger than me. And I've sort of watched them fall off the face of the earth. I'm like, what happened to her? And then like an email comes through, like, I decided to stop my business. And it's like, whoa, what happened? So, I always try and remember, like, why did I want to start this business? Why did I want to start? I wanted to start this because I didn't want a boss. I didn't want someone telling me I couldn't take the afternoon off to take my kid to the doctor or go to their field day, or, I wanted to be at the bus stop in the morning and at night. I wanted to be emotionally and physically available for my family and for myself, because I know that I am not that personality that's so bold and will just like go up to a boss and like ask for a raise or ask to leave early, or like it all gives me anxiety. I don't like disappointing people. I don't like awkward conversations. So it just like didn't work for me. And I also had been in a job where I was getting paid by call. I was a business and marketing mentor for gym owners on how to show up on social media and grow their business. And I was paid per call. And, at a certain point, I ran out of hours. So I hit a wall, you know? And I'm like, this is done. Like this. Plus, I wanted to build my own thing. So like, I always go back to like, why did I start doing this? And kind of like, what's the minimum that I can do to stay in a comfortable place, you know, profit wise? I don't, and I just made a post about this today, and I was like, I don't need 7 figures. I don't even need 6. Like my family doesn't need that. Would it be nice? Sure, maybe. But what's it going to take for me to get there? And am I willing to do that? Does that sound fun to me? So every decision I make for my business, I don't make very like brash last minute decisions. I ponder everything. Is that something I want to do? Does that align with what I wanted and envisioned for this business? You know? And I think about it, and I ask people, and I talk to people, and then I think about it more. Like, so it's funny. The fastest thing I ever did was build my online course and sell it. Like, but everything after that, I'm like methodical, slow. Does this align with what I want? You know, so yeah. Plus, you know, a lot of the burnout, just comes from saying yes too much and chasing those shiny objects, which, you know, I think if you just have this really nice, solid foundation, like you don't need to go chasing those objects. And if you remember what your why is and why you're here, like, you know, I don't want a team working for me. Like that's something I know. I used to own a gym with my husband. We had a team of people working. It wasn't fun. I didn't like managing people. So I always, you know, when I think about what it's going to take to get to that next level of my business, I'm like, I'm going to need people. I can't do it on my own. And do I want that? You know, like, so I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no. So that's something that I don't think enough podcasters and small business owners think about is like, what actually do I enjoy? It's just like, what is everyone else doing and how am I copying it because I just don't know what to do. I don't want to sit in, you know, like however you're choosing to do your next step. For most podcast hosts, they don't dwell too much on time. They're like, oh, let's just do it and I'll think about it later. But when setting up that goal is important. So in terms of social media, you already have a newsletter. You talked about content repurposing. How much of your content repurposing do you do in the year? Because you're a big fan of planning. And so how much is that into the saving energy, saving mental load? Tell me more about that.
I would say, so I post 6 days a week, and I am very purposeful. Like my course is about like batching content ahead of time because it's just what I like to do to stay sane and to make the most of my time. So I would say somewhere between like 30 to 40% of my content is repurposed. And the only way to have content to repurpose is by posting consistently for a significant amount of time. So I've been around for 2.5 years. I've never stopped posting 6 days a week. So I have a lot of content to draw on. So I would say at least, I would say more like 40% is repurposed. So yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's an incredible percentage. I repurpose every now and again because I do like creating content. Like that's my happy place. But I repurpose maybe twice a month. But I love that you're saying I am growing, I'm showing up online, and you have a huge base, and no one is like posting on that comment. I've seen that 4 months ago. How dare you repurpose content?
And oh my God, you sound like me. That's what I say to my students when they're like, well, people are going to say, no, they're not. And if they do, it's your mom and she's paying way too much attention to everything you're doing. Like I've never had someone say, you posted that 4 months ago. Like, why are you talking about this again? Like my audience is constantly growing. There's constantly people that haven't seen these posts. They performed really well previously. So why wouldn't they perform well again? Plus, something like 5 to 7% of your audience even sees what you post in the first place. So there's this huge opportunity to be repurposing or just straight up reusing content that performed well in the past. Like, don't fix it if it's not broke, you know, and work smarter, not harder. Like it goes along with those two like super cliche, things. So yeah.
No, that's true. And it goes again, like I love drawing the parallel between social media and podcasting because it's the same problem for the listener is like thinking about, okay, I love creating, but at the same time, it's like you're spending 2 hours creating content, and this will fall on nicely onto the next topic, which is creating versus consuming. Yeah. So something that I think too many, because we love creating, we just spend too much time, and then we think, but my podcast content is not engaged, it's not reaching anyone in my community. But the issue is kind of deeper, isn't it?
So creating versus consuming, that's another big topic. A lot of my students will complain, they don't have time. They don't have time to make content. They don't have time to batch content. And these are also my highest engaging students, with my content.
Right.
They're the comments. They're the first ones to comment. They're saving. They're, messaging me, DMing me on my stories. So I'm sort of like, everyone has the time for things that they make a priority. So it's up to you. If I'm always like, listen, I'm not telling you have to make creating content a priority, but, if something else is more important to you right now, then that's your prerogative. But, for me, when I wanted to leave my 9 to 5, the most important thing was for me to create really good content that was going to attract the good audience that I wanted. So yeah, I'm actually shockingly not a big consumer of social media, which people always laugh about. But I'm just not on there aimlessly scrolling. I'm not. I'm always like, I don't see your posts. I don't see anyone's posts because I get in there. I work like it's my job. I reply to DMs. I reply to comments. I see how my content's doing. I get out. If I'm scrolling my feed, I'm literally just scrolling for inspiration. That's the main thing. And I don't really get sucked into it. There's actually an app, Anna, that people might want to check out. It's called the 1 Sec app, SEC, 1 Sec, second. And it actually, I did it for a minute just to see what it was like, but it basically makes you take a huge, big, deep breath before getting onto any social media app. And really kind of makes you question, do I want to do this? Do I have to do this? Am I getting on for any reason, or am I just doing it subconsciously because I'm bored? So
I like that.
It has helped some of my students a lot who were consuming too much, because consuming also, kicks in that imposter syndrome, right?
Yep.
My God, because you're following all these people that do what you do, and it's consuming your feed, and it's consuming your explore page. And you're like, well, everyone's doing this already. There's no point in me doing it. But the truth is, it's just not true, because if you're bringing your personality to it and you're bringing your values and your character to the table, your content will be unlike anybody else's. Even if someone's doing it, the way you teach, the way you analyze things, you're so unique. Everyone's so unique in their life experiences to get them to where they are and their view on things. So I'm always just first of all, don't follow those people, mute them, unfollow them. Anyone who's making you feel icky or you're not good enough, get them out of your feed. I only follow people who make me feel good. So I think that's a super important message as well.
Yes, I love that, especially because so many of the podcasters I work with, they're like, Anna, so-and-so is doing so much better than me. And I was like, well, you were getting engagement, means that you were doing it well as well, but you just stopped because you started on this analysis paralysis, and you stop looking at the content, that the value that you bring in, and you're putting it through the lens of, people who may be ahead of you. And so of course they're going to get a heads up. Maybe they dedicate more time. Maybe they don't have kids, and they can spend the whole day scrolling through and automating and doing things. So consider that.
Yeah, totally.
And something that I think it's important to discuss too is, because your account grew a lot. If I'm not mistaken, it was through Reels, right?
It was through yeah.
Was it
a Reel? Yeah,
a Reel.
Yeah, crazy.
I've been following you for a few years now, and so you're one of 43 certified experts on Canva, which I was like, I remember the moment you talked about it, I was like, yes, Sam, woohoo.
Oh my gosh.
On the side, cheering you on. And you were probably thinking, it's weird to share. And everybody in your audience was like, yeah, girl, go.
Yeah. Yes.
So actually, as we're talking about imposter syndrome, I would love to discuss how was that, because there's a really great story that I think more people need to know about, because everyone talks about the accolades, but not enough people understand that, what is the journey to get there, and once you get there, how things still feel like you're still not big enough, it just never ends.
Yes, it doesn't ever end. I know, it's terrible. Yeah, so becoming a Canva verified expert, you cannot apply, you cannot ask to be a part of this exclusive club of 43 people in the world. Canva has to reach out to you one day. And the way that you're nominated by someone internally at Canva. So like, I don't know anybody at Canva. Like, it's in Australia, the headquarters. So I just kept, pumping out content on Canva. And one day I got this magical email at the end of December of 2022. And it was like, you've been nominated to become a Canva certified or Canva verified expert. Like, let's hop on a Zoom and see if it could be a good fit for you. And I just about fell off my chair. I felt like I made it. So I had this great call, bing, bam, boom. I got verified, and you get invited into this group of, there's a Slack group and you have Zooms every month. And like immediately when I got there, I had like massive imposter syndrome, like just there's OGs in the group, and I felt like I was this newbie who had no business being there. And they're mostly YouTubers who just have, millions, like hundreds of thousands, if not millions of followers. And here I was at the end of December when I got verified. I don't want to say only, I had 10,000 followers. I had very engaged followers, but it was still 10,000, and which was probably the lowest of the group. And I just, I started to question a lot of what I was doing, if it was good enough, what are they doing versus what am I doing? And then I just like, listen, there's 43 of us. Somebody nominated me. They took the time to look at what I'm doing. They thought I was good enough. I've got to believe that I'm good enough. And I just have to keep the path, keep moving forward, keep doing what I was doing, because it obviously worked to get me to this point. So yeah, that was probably like the biggest pang of imposter syndrome I've ever had. And it's still a work in progress, but.
But you're not stopping and you're not disappearing.
Never.
And that's the thing. Yes.
No.
So for those, I didn't want to interrupt the train of thought for the story, but what does it mean to be Canva verified, if people are wondering?
Yeah, so basically it just means that we get early access to any new Canva features coming out, and we get to test it, and we get to give feedback to the creators and the really smart people who make all this stuff happen behind the scenes. And we get to be on calls where we hear about all the upcoming features, and we get to be in little like groups. Like, they want feedback on video production right now in Canva. So they asked me if I'd be a part of like a small group of people who started testing and giving feedback on features. So it's a pretty cool opportunity. And all I have to do is just post twice a month about Canva, which is, I think I laughed out loud when he told me that, the guy that's in charge. I was like, 2? I am definitely 2. I'm good. I'm good. Yeah.
That is amazing. But it's such a good reminder that wherever you are in your journey, and I have these conversations with a few fellow creators, and I'm like, these people don't have such big followings, but they are still achieving things because of the quality of the work, the ethics of the work, the community that is engaged. They've been consistent, and that pays off more than having the numbers, and that goes on to podcasting as well. And I think that's good to remember, and that story just illustrated so well.
Yeah, absolutely. Vanity metrics, people get pretty caught up in those.
Yes. And it's about the impact, isn't it? Like, I mean, you already adore using Canva, like you already talk about it every day. It's like a nice add-on that you get like that Canva verified expert on your bio, and you're like, all right, it's a nice to have. Awesome. Yeah. So let's quickly talk about stories versus feed. I would like to focus again on like, if people want to be consistent, but they're constantly, normally I see that they're overthinking everything. So tell us a little bit about how you're using your feed and your stories in a way that actually works for you, because I think it's really clever. So how do you do it, Em?
Yes, how do I do it? Okay, first of all, I do want to tell people I'm only on Instagram, which is another little tidbit on not burning out. I was told I should be on TikTok. I'm told I should be on Pinterest. I've been told I should be on YouTube. I've been told I should have a podcast. And I'm like, I get it. Like I know, and thank you. But, I stick with one platform, and it's the one that I love being on the most as a consumer, and the one that has just felt the most right for me. So I've sort of stayed in my lane, and I've dabbled in Pinterest. I've dabbled in YouTube. I've dabbled in TikTok, and just none of them really They didn't light me up like Instagram does. So I have only Instagram, and I basically will post. I think about my feed or my grid as like my storefront. It's where I'm showing up consistently. I'm providing a lot of value through education, entertainment, and inspiration. You see my face, you see my graphics, and it's just curated, it's branded, very professional, very put together, right? Because I think that's important. I have a post that went out like, so many, the people who say feed, aesthetics don't matter are lying. They're lying to themselves. They're lying to you. Like, so it looks really, really professional. But then I sort of approach my stories the complete opposite way. They are mine area to be organic, in the moment, uncurated. Like, I barely ever post stories that come from a template in Canva. Like, I don't even, maybe twice in my life. It's more just me showing up on video and kind of sharing like the ins and out of my day, of my life, of my home, of my yard, my dog.
Of your kitchen fund.
My kitchen fund. Yes, I started a kitchen fund. We live in a 1950s house, and I just would give anything to have a new kitchen, which is coming, by the way. So I joke that every, purchase you're contributing towards my kitchen fund, which is not a joke. It's true.
In a way, side note, it's a great way to humanize your story while you're doing things. And everyone is like, oh yeah, like I have an old kitchen, or my parents have an old kitchen. It's a pain. It's relatable, right?
Oh my God. The number of DMs, because I did a kitchen tour. I'm like, look at my kitchen. Like, look at my white tile countertops. And people were like, I got multiple DMs. Like, I love you more for this. I love you even more because my kitchen looks like this. And like, you see these personalities, influencers, if you will, on social media, and you're just like, they're perfect. Their house is perfect. Their kids are like, and I'm here like, I have 93,000 followers, which is amazing. But like, I still have this like crappy old kitchen and, help me get a new one. And I don't know, just again, the more imperfect you can be, the more relatable you are to people, and the more approachable and the more memorable, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, I still remember the kitchen fund. So
yeah,
I mean,
see?
But it's funny. I want to do a couple of mentions on what you said. So for those who are the listener, you don't know, and by the way, you should go follow her at the Creative Bodega. But basically, you have a balance. The feed is where you put effort into looking great no matter what, and then the connection, authenticity, the relatability comes through the stories. But I want to make a mention to something that you didn't mention, and that was that I always pick up on these things, and I'm like, brain, it's in my brain forever. But I remember you mentioned that it was an insecurity. You never wanted to do any content close to the kitchen, right? Because you were like, oh, I don't want them to see.
Yes, it embarrassed me. Because I felt like I had to just keep up this persona, My office looks nice when I'm on my stories because, I have control over this area, and, I'll show certain parts of my backyard, but maybe not others where there's clutter. And then I just was like, you know what? I was avoiding making stories in my kitchen because, yes, my countertops embarrassed me. My dusty pink tiled floor embarrassed me. But then I just got to a certain point where like, darn, that was a really good story. And now I'm not posting it because I'm embarrassed by my kitchen. Like, that's just dumb. Just put it out. I bet people won't even notice it. Right. And then I decided to go for it, and it was pretty amazing. I just decided to put it out there. Like, listen, this is an area of my house. I'm not super proud of it. And funny enough, people were like, oh my God, I love it. I'm like, stop.
Yes, I love it. Because I keep telling podcasters all the time, the things that you think are your insecurities are the connectors to your audience. They are the relatability that will take your brand further in connecting deeper than anything else in your brand. So
your vulnerabilities. Like I tell people, I'm like, you want people to open up with you. You want people to engage with you. Like you need to go first. You need to open up. You need to be vulnerable. You need to tell us stories about your life, how you got here, biggest struggles, downfalls, failures. Like, and then people will be so much more likely to be like, hey, like me too. And I think that's where people get engagement wrong a lot of the time on social media. They're just constantly hammering their audience to like engage with them. But like, you don't know that person and you don't feel any connection with them and they're not opening up to you first. So your walls are kind of up, right? So the more vulnerable and open you can be with your audience, I think it will pay back like tenfold.
Yes. Okay. I love that. And this is the thing that really gets me fired up, because especially as women, and both our audiences are, quite high on the female side, and we just overthink everything. And another thing that women do a lot is like, I can figure it out. And I'm like, no. Some things you have to pay for, some things you have to delegate. And so it's kind of like a little hard left on this, but I want to talk about your courses can help small business owners, female entrepreneurs to show up more consistently online, because I think that it's important that we sometimes consider like, okay, like what is it that I'm missing from my strategy that they can just go onto your page and get?
Yeah. So I think that I couldn't agree more with you. It really hurts my heart when I hear, again, mostly female business owners, that's my audience, say, I can't sign up for your course yet because I'm not making money in my business yet. And I'm just like, no. Like I invested probably $2,000 to $2,500 in my business before I made a dime because I didn't know how to make an online course. So I had to pay a lot of money just to an expert to fast track that information and to get it handed to me in a bow from beginning to end, right? I didn't want to YouTube it. I didn't want to Google search it. I was like, I need this information. I need it delivered in a clear way so that I can get rolling. So that whole misconception of like, well, I can't do this because I'm not making money yet. Another perfect example, later.com. That's what I use to auto publish my posts. When I started the Creative Bodega, I had 2 other jobs and 2 toddlers, and I didn't have time to remember each day to hit publish, right? So I had to start paying $13 a month to have someone do it for me, right? An automation service do it for me. I just didn't see a way around that. I knew publishing was important and I had to be consistent, and I wasn't getting it done on my own because of my jobs. So I had to pay. I had to start paying, and it made all the difference in the world. So I really do believe I built my course so that women stopped sort of like hacking and fumbling through Canva and their branding and not knowing, do these colors look good? And they're changing their fonts on every single template they use. And they're wasting a ton of time customizing templates. Like, it crushes my heart to see it happening. And I'm like, I could make this so much faster, so much easier, not only on the aesthetics side, which is a huge part of my course, but also on the type of content you're making to actually connect and convert your audience, right?
Yeah.
Those last minute posts that people do, oh my God, it's 9 p.m. and I didn't get a post out. Let me just like slap something together. Like, no, that's not a way to live. That's not a way to grow your business. You need to be intentional. There needs to be a strategy behind it, but you also need to be having fun. So I really try to teach everything I know about, nailing down your branding, and we do that together. What I love about my course so much is that like everyone starts at the same time. I limit it to 50 people, and you have homework all the weeks of the 12 weeks, and you submit it into our private community, and like you hear from me on everything that you do. And that's, I think, what's really unique about my course, but that's the part that I love the most, is giving the feedback. So it's not something I'm willing to sacrifice. So it's just this really cool transformation process from beginning to end, nailing your branding, what look you want, who you're trying to attract, figuring out your brand pillars, figuring out what type of posts you could be making consistently, figuring out what Canva templates could go with those posts that you could reuse, and then just nailing this amazing content schedule to move forward with.
Yes. And another thing that I want to talk about is the importance of branding, because I've been online in the, Instagram space mainly since 2020. That's when I launched my business, and I've been consistent for 3 years, not six days a week, but still showing up at least 3 times a week minimum. And the one thing that I did was okay, I need people to recognize my brand to stop the scroll because they're going to be doing 1,000 things.
Yeah.
So the things that I nailed were colors and fonts, and I stayed within those things. 3 colors, 2 fonts, and that's it, right? Like in photos that every now and again, so they recognize and stuff like that. So I want to talk about branding and consistency and how important that is, because I don't think enough people look at branding initially and think that it's probably one of the most important things in their communication online. And sometimes it's worth killing, quote unquote, the creativity of using 7 different colors on every other post. So tell us a little bit about how important it is to use branding that is, good for the long term.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people think of branding when they hear that. They're like, what's the first thing you think people do when they start a business? What's the first thing that you think that they need?
Yeah, 1,000%.
A logo. Everyone's like, a logo. I need a logo. I'm like, oh man. And we do make logos in my course, but I'm like, I'm telling you guys, I use this like barely ever. Like,
and I don't have a logo after 3 years.
Yeah, you really don't even need, I'm like, you don't really need one. I don't even put them on my posts. Like, I'm not relying on a logo. I'm relying on my colors and my fonts to be super recognizable. So yeah, it doesn't have to be that complicated, but it is so important that you just have this really consistent professional look. Everything looks more put together. And I think that people kind of judge you when they go to your feed and they're like, is it scrappy? Is it all over the place? Like, because I don't know. I just think that they'll be less less trusting of you, I think, if 100%. It is. And then if they go there and they see like yours or like mine, where you are like seeing this beautiful, consistent branding and fonts and stuff like that, they're like, wow, this person has their what together. Like, they're not messing around. They're professionals. So I think that people underestimate the amount of clarity and confidence that can come with really excellent branding. And that's what I've seen. Like, these businesses, these women's businesses just like come to life. And for them to start actually posting because they're so excited about what it looks like. And it finally feels like them. And it's finally attracting the right person. So yeah, I think it is highly underestimated, but so powerful when you nail it.
Yes. And a couple of things that I want to talk about. As you were talking about, I was like, oh my gosh, it's the perfect segue to talk about how also quickly, one, your podcast should have similar branding colors to your company. They should not be too different because you're going to be posting on your podcast on your feed. I don't recommend creating a separate Instagram account because most people cannot keep up with 2 Instagram accounts. But so like branding for your podcast and your business is like taking a selfie where you can see the arm showing, or the difference between having either someone take a good headshot of you or paying for a photographer. That is the importance of branding. Would you agree?
I totally agree.
Yes.
Totally.
And that's something that you do on your courses, which I love. They're so good and easy to follow along. And you have a range, right? You have low ticket offers, which are like, take your course at your own pace, and then like hire more dedicated stuff, that programs that will go with you. So tell us a little bit about those.
Yeah. So I have a freebie that's absolutely one of my favorite freebies. I feel like it should actually be paid for. And it's just how to DIY your brand kit in Canva. So it's like, I want to call it like a 3-page ebook PDF where I walk you through exactly how to set up your branding in Canva with some recommendations on like how to find colors, how to find a logo, all that. So it's free. Then I have a course that's $99 called the Branding Bootcamp, where I hold your hand and it's about an hour's worth of lessons and templates, like my favorite logo templates, how to customize them, how to upload them into your brand kit, how to pick colors. Oh, here's my top 20 color palettes that I love. Feel free to steal one. Here are my favorite font combinations. So it's really way more information and way more resources to figure out your branding. And then I have my signature course, which is called the Canva Collective, which is 12 weeks long, where I take the 50 women, and it's way more intense, way more hand-holding, and you get my feedback. On those other 2, you're not going to hear from me. Even if you send it to me, I'm just like, good job.
It's fair. It's like you're keeping your boundaries if you want.
I know. Yeah. It's like, gosh, do you know how many people send me their branding? I don't feel right giving you feedback when I don't know you. I don't know your business. I don't know who you're trying to attract. Like, I can't just be like, that's good, or swap this color out. I want to understand more about you. So it's not really fair to you or for me or my time. So yeah, that's hard for me.
Yes, and you that's why you created multiple levels. Is like, well, if you can only afford this is what you're getting, and then you're working toward the next thing. And would you agree that, like, I see this all the time in the podcast community where women are like, I cannot afford it. I'm like, your podcast deserves good branding. Like, how can you expect your listeners to take you seriously if you're not willing to invest in this process that will make your podcast better online, right?
100%. I mean, even me, like, people you're judged on it. So if I'm looking for a podcast and I search something, I'm looking at those little thumbnails. I don't know what you call them because I don't have a podcast, but like, if it's scrappy or unclear or it's a bad graphic, like you started with a blank canvas in Canva.
It's a podcast cover art, by the way.
Thank you. The podcast cover art, like, I'm picking which one I'm going to listen to almost based entirely on what I'm seeing in that tiny little square. Because I'm like, they're legit or they're not.
Yes.
That's it.
Oh,
and I would imagine it's the same with someone's feed. Like, someone's, post comes across your page, you go to their Instagram bio and you're like, they're legit or they're not. I'm moving on, or I'm going to hit follow.
Yes, 1000%. But also, tell us about the special discount that you're getting our listeners.
Oh, yeah. So if you guys head to my website, which is The Creative Bodega, which is Bodega, I'm giving 15% off to your listeners. So when you're checking out, you just enter the coupon code POD, P-O-D, in all capitals, and it should hook you up.
Awesome. I love that. And yes, because again, you should be investing on your podcast. If you're not investing on your podcast, whatever, it's like a strategy or it's good graphics, you are missing out on opportunities. So here's the discount, 15% discount. So thecreativebodega.com.
Thecreativebodega.com.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Everything will be on the show notes. So for everyone listening right now, remember that all that we talked about as well, that app that I'll have, everything we mentioned will be there. So thepodcastspace.com/podcast. You're just looking for the thumbnail that has M's beautiful face on it, and on the show notes of this episode as well. So thank you so much for being with us and sharing all that all this wisdom about creating good graphics, creating good branding. And so I cannot wait to hear the listeners' ahas. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a complete pleasure getting to know you. Especially through Instagram is how we found each other. And I feel like we'll be in touch for a while to come.
1000%. So thank you so much. And for you, the listener, you've been keeping up, you're taking the notes, you're super excited to implement all of the things. Share them with us. I'm at The Podcast Space on Instagram. If you are over there, DM me. I'm always excited and thrilled to hear your ahas. It's been such an amazing journey. So keep them coming. I want to hear how you're growing your show. And so just keep creating content that is imperfect, but moves you forward. All right. I'll see you next week.